Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today for a presentation on marketing in the manufacturing industry. Just a couple of housekeeping issues just before we start. At the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, you'll see a little box, and it's a comment box. So if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to type your question there. Similarly, if you have any technical issues, please also comment whatever that issue is in that box, and we'll be able to respond appropriately. Just a bit of a brief introduction into who I am. My name is Layla, and I'm joined here by John Cook, who is the manager of the manufacturing industry at the New South Wales Business Chamber. So I work for the commercial services side of the New South Wales Business Chamber in Australian Business Consulting and Solutions. And just a bit of background into who I am. I've had over a decade's worth of experience in the marketing field, in mostly corporate marketing in a host of different industries, including manufacturing, and it's for large and also small multi-million dollar companies. So the experience is quite broad. I'm going to hand over to John to briefly introduce himself and his expertise.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm John Cook, and I'm manager for manufacturing industry in the New South Wales Business Chamber. My role is to really support all our manufacturing members and non-members as well in their manufacturing efforts, and to help them find a way forward in the future. My background is metallurgical. I'm a metallurgist and materials scientist. I've spent most of my life in the metals industries, and some 30 odd years in management, and my interest in that management area is really all about change, strategy, implementation, and leadership. So it's about making a difference. I hope you enjoy the webinar.
Just to give you a brief rundown as to what to expect in today's webinar and what the layout will be. What we're going to do is take a brief look at the manufacturing industry to give you some insight, and I suppose set the scene for our recommendation as to the direction that manufacturers should take in this country. And then we'll put together a bit of a recipe for success, or what we believe are our recommendations for successful manufacturing moving forward. And then we'll discuss how marketing isn't just about pretty pictures, and then we'll look at marketing strategies for the manufacturing industry.
Okay, well, as we all know, manufacturing has been doing it pretty tough for the last few decades. Some blame it on the high Australian dollar in the last few years. It's certainly made it difficult for producers to compete on the world stage, and it's made exports a lot cheaper. That's made it very tough going. The dollar's fall in recent months has reduced some of these stresses, but in some cases it's too late. The damage has already been done. Job losses we hear about every day in the media, and that's probably going to intensify. It's only in the last few days I've heard of some more jobs going in the bathroom fittings manufacturing area. All economies experience structural change because of changes in technology and changes in consumer demand. Wealthier nations like Australia have in general declined. Well, manufacturing in our countries has declined as a share of output and the jobs for some decades. However, in Australia, the decline has been larger than elsewhere, and the nation's manufacturing now accounts for a smaller share of GDP than in most other higher income economies. Currently, it's running at around about 8 or 9%. Over to you, Layla.
In most industries, and I think this is one of the really interesting things for me, competition is generally seen as a good thing because it stimulates the economy, encourages business people to improve their offering. But when we look at the manufacturing industry, what's really quite interesting is that competition has had the opposite effect in many cases, as we've seen in some very recent industry surveys. And it seems to be across the board, so regardless of the size of the manufacturing business, competition is being cited as a major cause of concern when considering the future of the manufacturing sector.
Yeah, media reports on the state of manufacturing suggest manufacturing's future is pretty bleak, but there are many really bright spots out there on the horizon. Some elements of the sector have seen strong rise in exports, particularly in the areas of professional and scientific equipment and specialised machinery. The value of manufacturing has actually risen by a factor of about 4 over recent decades, despite falling as a percentage of our GDP. And so we're actually doing more with less. In fact, manufacturing has been growing steadily since the turn of the century at around about 0.9% per annum. Accounting for, as I said earlier, about 8.7% of GDP in 2011, or $111 billion worth of goods. It employs almost 1 million Australians. Significantly, manufactured goods accounted for 36.1% of total exports, so it has a lot of value there. Manufacturing is critical to our future prosperity. For every dollar's worth of manufactured output, another $1.43 of value is created elsewhere in our economy. You should compare this with the extra 71 cents created by service industries. It's about half as much. There are more articles you can read on that, and we can provide the links to that if you wish.
For me, what was really interesting when John and I first started working together a few months ago, John has a plethora of stories and experiences in the manufacturing industry, and he was telling me about those experiences. And one of the themes that were repeated in each of the examples was that it seemed to be that the management in the manufacturing industry has become stale, and it's a little bit resistant to change. There also seems to be a lack of acceptance that very significant change is now a constant in our business environment, and that can be sometimes much to our detriment. Worst of all, we are not developing a leadership capacity to manage change and move back into fit with the rest of the world. And I think that that's what the really the point that we need to emphasize on is that across the rest of the world, that's really where our competitors are from. We were talking about this webinar the other day, and John said something very interesting to me, and it really stuck. He said, we spend a lot of our time doing what we are comfortable with, but not attending to those things that are important. And it always seems to be that same old thing where, we're always busy and there's always something urgent that takes precedence over what is actually important. So for instance, every business needs to develop at least a notion of where it's headed. So like a strategic direction supported by functional plans for how we're actually going to get there. And it's really not about creating wads of paperwork or folders of all of these files that are just going to sit in our desk. It's about understanding your market and where your business fits in that market. And it's about maintaining a vigilance over market trends and watching the forces that act on your market and business environment. So marketing, for example, which is what we're here to speak about today, in its most holistic sense, is a critical component of strategic management. In using the word marketing holistically, it means that marketing is actually everybody's business, and it's not just the responsibility of the marketing department. It means that the production team, the product development team, the finance team, whoever it may be, really need to focus on providing the market what it needs and what it wants. And when I make this statement, I don't make it lightly, and it's because we recognise that there are maybe issues and very significant challenges, particularly for our SME friends that are online today. But when you accept that you are competing in a global economy and living constantly with a changing business environment, it's now par for the course. And if you can embrace it, if you begin to immerse yourself in the challenges, you'll actually find the experience really worthwhile. You'll begin your own leadership journey, and in the meantime start to develop your own capability. You will indeed take the first steps towards becoming a sustainable business, and then one that can actually hold its own in Australia and on the world stage. There needs to be no hesitation or fear when it comes to this. There have been others that have gone before and they have survived, believe us, and you will probably come out at the end of this to really have enjoyed the journey.
Now, is there a recipe for success? Well, in asking this question, there's obviously no very finitely defined formula. If there was, we'd all know it. What the answer is. The world is not so simple. It's complex, and it's becoming more and more complex. But let's take a little look at least one Australian success story and see what we can learn from that. Now, the company that I've put in here as our example is Rode Microphones, and they've not had an easy path to success. As I put here on this slide, they faced all the usual small business challenges, be they financial, competitive threats, size of local markets, and managerial challenges as well. Peter Friedman, who's now the chief executive and owner of that business, was not a professional manager. And in fact, his real passion was just tinkering with microphones. Most of all, he was keen just to have a go. He wasn't afraid of anything. Rode Microphones started way back in 1967 by his father and mother, Henry and Astrid Friedman, and Peter inherited the business when his father passed away in the late 80s. At that stage, the business was struggling. It was growing, but struggling from a financial perspective when the market gained access to low-cost product from China. Peter bit the bullet, re-engineered the cheaper imports, and so started a revolution in how people recorded every day all around the world. It was persistence that got him through that period. By 2000, technology and precision manufacturing had been built into the business and its offerings. I emphasize that, technology and precision manufacturing. So he was beginning to create a manufacturing competitive advantage that would build longevity in his business. And indeed, he became well known for that. They became core values in the business. Further heavy investment in machinery meant that the company went from strength to strength, leveraging its innovation in design and technology development and its competitive edge in that manufacturing process. Exporting had become a mainstay of its market.
And actually, on that note, Rode Microphones actually won Exporter of the Year at last night's Export Award. So it's like as if we had a bit of a crystal ball when we put this together, really.
Oh, how about that? I didn't know that. That's news this morning. These days, Rode has taken a very successful journey and has about $30 million invested in its manufacturing machinery. It applies its innovative ways of doing things by modifying the machines as purchased to even further improve its manufacturing competitive advantage. And in fact, they see themselves as having a buffer and a real gap between themselves and the Chinese. So it's not easily replicated. Very important. All this has taken considerable time. I mean, we're talking about a period of over 20 years, 25, 30 years. So you've got to be in it for the long haul. I think that's a key feature. The business has had a consistency of purpose, which is very, very important, and has created its now well-known competitive advantage. The best technology is benchmarked against the world and high precision in its manufacturing processes. The owner-manager, Peter Friedman, is future-oriented, and the first time I ever heard him speak, the very first words he uttered were, "My job is tomorrow." And I think that's a very powerful lesson. He got my attention right away. The real start to Rode's success was precipitated by a crisis. That's often the case as well. We don't get change unless we have a crisis of one sort or another, and if it's imposed externally, you really have to react, but you can impose it internally as well. The arrival of cheaper imported products, as I mentioned before, in the early 90s created a business and financial crisis, and I recall Peter telling us the story of how he was really struggling. But he made the right decisions and decided to embark on an innovative strategy. He was going to become the best in the market, and that turned the business around and led it to its export markets. They're now in 108 countries with something like 4,000 retail outlets. I mean, that's a tremendous success. Rode is also very marketing oriented. It spends about 10% of its turnover on its marketing effort, and I think that's very, very significant. They don't back away from that. In so many ways, Rode exemplifies the German Mittelstand business model, the model to which Germany's economic recovery through manufacturing of recent times at least has been attributed. Features of a typical Mittelstand are that they're family owned. Mind you, they could be very large. We tend to think of family-owned businesses in this country being very small. Mittelstand companies could be 50 million euro turnover and as many as 1,000 employees. But importantly, they're always tinkering to have the best products, and that just reminded me of Peter Friedman in Rode. He just continually tinkers, and I've seen pictures of his sound room that he's invested very heavily in, where he spends a large part of his days. So is there a recipe for success? Let's ask the question again. I think you can see in Peter's story, and in others I could repeat here, although we don't have time, innovation is a key factor. Constantly trying to improve what you're doing and making it market directed. Customer focus is extremely important, And I've heard Peter talk about this, and he doesn't back away from his customers. He over-services them, and his belief in doing that is that he'll keep those customers for life. They won't go anywhere else. They won't get the same service. Value focus. Not only are his microphones very well engineered, but they're also good value as well. They're not at the most expensive end of the market. And he also is very, very supportive of his employees, and they're very highly skilled. And I think there's some lessons to be learned there. That's not all there is, of course, but that's a good start. I think one of the concepts that manufacturers need to understand is that marketing's more than just pretty pictures, and it isn't something that's just nice to have. It's an imperative. It's too often just an item on the second-tier priority list, and it's more than, or sometimes it's just a brochure. It's something that the entire company needs to do, and something that the entire organisation needs to make a commitment to doing. And that's a lesson I learnt in the early 90s. Everybody in the business should be focused on the market, and that just doesn't mean the marketing department. So it's essential that manufacturers look at new ways to communicate with their target audience and how to reinvigorate their business from a marketing perspective.
Very true. And I think what's really important before you commence with any marketing initiative, the very first thing that you have to do before you jump in and decide, oh yeah, I need to redevelop my website or create a Facebook page, is to grab a blank piece of paper and ask yourself some fairly basic questions. But often, in our experiences, people have a tendency to really struggle in answering them, particularly manufacturers. And one of the very first questions to ask is, who is your target market? And it's more than just about defining them by your job. So you can't just say it's the procurement manager, for example, and they work for a small to medium-sized business. It's really about getting to know them and doing some what we call in marketing speak persona work, so you get a deep understanding of your target market. And it's about asking, who are they and what challenges them and what keeps them up at night, and how can your products or services really help them overcome their challenges. And this is a really important point, because it's more than just about listing your products and what their features are. It's about the specific problems your products solve, and it's about helping you then define what the value of your product is to that segment of the market. And a lot of people actually use something that's called a design thinking to be able to develop that, because it's about looking at it from the customer's perspective more than, well, here at ABC Manufacturer we do this. Further to that, find out, what drives them and what motivates them, and how can you help them be the hero in their business. And if you can do that, you'll actually find yourself to be really quite successful. Once you have a sound understanding of your customers, it's then time to look at yourself to understand what is so special about you and what sets you apart from your competitors. Looking at this based on a value set that's important to your target audience is really important. And it doesn't have to be a huge thing. It's not about, competing on price or offering really big discounts. It could be that you respond to inquiries within 12 hours, so they know that if they come to you, they'll get a fast response, or that you can fulfill orders within 72 hours. So it's not anything that's huge, but it should be something that is perceived as being a high level a priority list for your target audience, and it would allow you then to develop a sustainable, a unique selling proposition. So when we were looking at this presentation, one of the ways that, and based on our experience, one of the ways that we believe that manufacturers could start to dip their toe back into marketing was through a digital strategy. And there's a couple of reasons for this. It isn't scary, so you're not really required to invest a huge amount of money and then sit back and cross your fingers like what you would in traditional marketing, if you put an ad in a paper or in a magazine. You can start to implement things slowly and then see the reaction you receive, and then either continue or change your path. B, you can start to get your audience to tell you what they want, and you can ask for feedback and run competitions and really engage your audience and get them part of the manufacturing manufacturing process. We ran a webinar a couple of weeks ago on social media in China, and one of the really great success stories about social media in China was there was one of the larger luxury brands, I can't remember off the top of my head what it was, and they actually went out onto social media platforms and were asking their followers to choose the color and to choose the style of the bag and really have strong input. And I think when you do that, you're getting the customer in at the beginning of the journey and really getting their buy-in. And the third reason why we recommend digital is that it gives you an opportunity to test your message. So as we've discussed earlier, in the current market, competing on price really isn't where we recommend that you go. You need to find out what is unique about your offering and position your message around that unique selling proposition. I'd also like to remind people, if you do have a question, please type it into the comment box in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. We are aiming to have question time at the end, so we will definitely try to respond to as many questions as possible.
Yeah, there's an opportunity here that we'd recommend for manufacturing types to explore. The statistics you see on screen are general across the board, however, they're true for the manufacturing industry as well.
Absolutely, and I think, the statistics you now see on this slide, it really lets us have an opportunity to look at the digital landscape in Australia. So if we have a look, there's 14.3 million Australians who go online on a monthly basis. And this isn't just about buying products or, looking to purchase something for cheap over on an American site. It really is about, where people go to start to research businesses that they're working with and find out more about a B2B relationship. 72% of those 14.3 million Australians go online every single day. So an online presence, which is part of digital marketing, is really quite important. 75% of purchases are from Australian retailers, so there is definitely an instance where people do go online to look at partnerships. And one of the really big things is that mobile is extremely important. So you don't have to create an app or a specific mobile site or look at app advertising, although they definitely are things that are opportunities for you to look at. But you at least have to have a website that is responsibly designed, and so that really just means that the website then rejigs itself regardless of the mechanism that it's being viewed. And why that's important is because the internet usage on tablets and mobiles have surpassed that of desktop computers. So if you don't have a mobile-friendly website or presence, you're really limiting yourself. So if we have a look at the circle that's on your screen, according to the Australian Trade Commission, they believe that in 2020 online sales in Asia are going to exceed $650 billion, and that's a amount of money that almost makes me want to faint. It's huge, and it is actually greater than the combined sales of practically the rest of the world. So the potential is huge online, and it highlights what we were discussing earlier about competing on the world stage. So some of you out there might be thinking to yourself, well, why do I have to create a digital strategy? Why can't I just go out there and create a LinkedIn group page or create a Facebook page? The reason why you need to have a strategy, a digital strategy, is the reason why you have a business strategy and a business plan, is that it really does allow you to lay the foundation and it creates the building blocks for your online presence. So it will help you achieve your business goals, and the reason why is because it's really important to align your digital strategy with your overall business strategy. There really is no sense in going out there and investing either money or resources into doing something if it's not going to help you get to achieve your end goal. It'll help you reduce costs. Depending on the channel, marketing can be expensive and really none of us have money to waste. So the more thought that goes into planning the process, the more cost effective and more effective your strategy will be. Getting online online will help you engage your audience more. And the best thing about using digital channels is that it helps you create a conversation with your audience and really makes it a two-way conversation. And it's competitive, and let's face it, your competitors are taking advantage of the possibilities that digital channels present, and you don't want to miss out. Lastly, it has the opportunity to help you increase your revenue. So getting online opens up your reach. A salesperson can only service so many people in a day, and those people are generally restricted to a certain geography. So online really expands your reach and widens the opportunities that are available to you. And, you know, it's that old adage as well, a goal without a plan is just a wish. So I thought what might be really useful for all of you today is that we actually go through each stage of the planning process for creating a digital strategy. I know for me, it's always great to go to seminars and see all of these wonderful ideas that people put out there, but then how do I actually come back to the office and actually implement that? And so that's what we're going to go through today. So having a look at this slide, it essentially highlights each stage that you should take in the digital planning process. And we're going to go through some of those in a bit more detail. The first one, and like we said before, it's really about understanding what you want to achieve using your digital channels. So for example, you know, what do you want to get out of it? Are you wanting to sell last minute stock quickly? Are you wanting to reduce customer service calls? Do you want to showcase your services and show you are experts in your industry, or do you want to promote events or generate leads for your sales team? Each one of these goals are very different, and so therefore need a different strategy to help to try and achieve them. But whatever your goal is, you need to ensure that you know what they are before you embark in your digital marketing. Like we were talking about before, it's really important to understand your audience and to research them and create a persona for each of your target markets. And by doing this persona work, it's more than, you know, taking them for a coffee and kind of getting to know them. There's actually real value in it because it helps you decide on the channels that you should start to implement, what language and style to use to communicate to that audience, and it will help you actually communicate to them. So at the end of the day, if you sit and you think about all the different target markets that you have, you might have 4 or 5 different target audience. It's best to just pick 1 or 2 to focus on, so your top 2 priorities, and then when you've got time and you've got funds and you've got experience, you can focus on secondary target audiences. So for instance, if you're a manufacturer or marketing manager at a light bulb manufacturer and you're looking to bring in more business, you might target 5 buyer personas, and they might be a retailer, individual consumers, builders of new developments, building managers, lighting companies, so on. So what I really need you to do is then think about one of your goals that we discovered in the previous step, and then pick one of these personas that you've done in this exercise, and then what you'll do then is start to think about them as people and then not just job titles. So think about, you know, get really detailed into it. What's their name? Are they male or female? How much money do they make? Where do they live? How often are they online? What are some of their mannerisms? Do they have an assistant who screens their calls? What are their personal goals? So you can start to use that to your advantage. What challenges their ability to succeed? And so, you know, that lets you to find out, you know, how it is you're able to help them. And what are some of the most common objections, that this person will raise during a sales call. And that's a really important one because it allows you then to answer those objections or overcome them before they even ask the question. By asking all these different types of questions, you're then able to find out a lot more about them than just their job title, and it will help you make and design your message to market, and especially to them. So the next step in the process is then thinking about, okay, well, which channels to market do we use? And by choosing the channels that are going to help you achieve the goal we identified earlier for the target audience we just selected. So again, it's not just about, you know, choosing Facebook because Sally, your neighbor, told you that everyone's on Facebook and you need to be on there as well. It's about selecting the channels that are appropriate for your target audience and they're going to help you achieve your business goals. So I thought what we'll do now is have a look at some of the different components of a digital strategy, and the first one is a website. And you know, why build a website? And one of the really most the biggest reasons is because your website is your business open 24/7, 365 days a year. And more importantly, one of the really important things is that it actually validates who you are and what you do. So if you think about it, we've all been to networking functions, and you know, you've met somebody there and they give you their elevator pitch, and you swap business cards, and most of us, if you know what they pitched was of interest, would then go back to the office and look up that person's website. So it's important to have one so that you can demonstrate your capability, your success stories, how you've helped other people like them in the market. So if you don't have one, we would recommend getting one if it's going to help you realize your business goals. One question that we get asked about a lot in the marketing agency is, you know, is about SEO and SEM. So just really quickly, SEO, what is it? It really is about organic search. So if you think about when you go to Google, for example, and you're looking up something in Google, you've got ads up the top, and you've got ads on the right-hand side of the screen generally, and then the middle bit is the organic search results. It's a bit of a long tail strategy, but it really is made up of four things, or there's four things that you really need to consider when you're looking at SEO as a strategy, and that's the technology behind the website platform that you use. Google likes some platforms like WordPress, for example, more than other platforms. There's a couple of different strategies that you can implement to help you build up your internal and external linkage. Content is really, really important, and I think it's one of those marketing terms of late that's getting used quite a lot, and you know, in form of content marketing. And good, fresh, and original content that's updated regularly is really important. From Google's perspective, when their little robots and spiders crawl your website, it really tells Google, listen, we care and we know what it is that we're doing, and we want to provide the market with useful information. And from a customer's perspective, when they come on and they see that you've got content there from 2014 as opposed to 2009, it shows that you are relevant and you know what's happening. And then also social sharing. So do other people like your content? The more content that is shared among users, the more likely your results will appear on the first page. SEM, on the other hand, is what is referred to as search engine marketing, and it's things like Google AdWords. So if we go back to thinking about Google, it's the ads that are at the top of the screen and the right hand side of the screen. A couple of years ago, Google AdWords were things that weren't looked favorably upon from the consumer or from people that are researching, but it's slightly changed. People are becoming a lot more impatient than what they used to be, and so they're really liking AdWords because they know that you've got to pay for them. And what's a really good thing from a business perspective is that it gives you the opportunity to pay to ensure that you are seen at the right place at the right time. Email marketing or e-newsletters or EDMs, you know, they're a great tool to help you grow your website traffic, which is obviously then going to help with your SEO and to boost your your e-commerce conversion rates, and it's still one of the best ways to get recurring business. Now, I know that we all get 1,001 emails in a day, and there are some questionable emails or e-newsletters that are out there. So it's really important to ensure that the content of your e-newsletter is interesting, so it engages the reader. And the most beneficial aspect of e-newsletters is that it keeps you top of mind. So somebody might go to your website and then they're not ready to purchase, but they'll subscribe to the e-newsletter. And it's important then that you're then top of mind, because when they are at that point when they're ready to buy, they're going to think of you because you've been communicating with them regularly. Now, social media is it for manufacturers, and it's a yes and a no depending on what it is that you do. So in the marketing agency, we provide free one-on-one coaching to SMEs across all sectors as part of a government initiative called the Digital Enterprise Program. And one of the questions we get asked over and over again is, as soon as we kind of walk in the door of a person's office is, well, how do I set up Facebook? And every time I get asked that question, a cold shiver literally runs down my spine. And I kind of sit and I ask them, well, why do you want to set up a Facebook page in the first place? Which one of your business goals is it going to help you achieve, and who's actually going to manage it? And don't get me wrong, I'm all for social media. I am a marketer after all, and so it depends on the channel. So LinkedIn, for example, is great for manufacturers as it allows you to connect with people as they move jobs or positions, and you can post comments about changes to the industry, so you start to establish yourself as a subject matter expert. And that's perfect. But what I warn you against is setting up something for the sake of it. It needs to make sense, and in its existence needs to link back to that particular business goal. One thing that I would like to bring to your attention is something that I believe all manufacturers can benefit from in some way or another, and that is webinars, white papers, ebooks, and the like. These are all great to share your knowledge and build a sales pipeline and really establish yourself as an expert in your particular industry. A blog, which a lot of websites do have, could take a long time because they rely quite strongly on SEO, but white papers, ebooks, and the like, they can be emailed or promoted and can generate leads in a quite an interesting way and pretty much instantaneously. Another mechanism that works really well is the webinar. So you might be a national manufacturer, but you don't have offices all over the state, and you just really want to engage with people. And so webinars are great way to get your message across. They can reduce the cost of holding face-to-face events quite significantly, and they can actually increase your customer base quite substantially. So like white papers and ebooks, the registration process is really quite the best key, or the biggest key in the process. So even though if somebody doesn't turn up on the day like with traditional events, you at least have a registration list that you can go back to and follow up those people with a phone call or an email. As mentioned briefly earlier, why embrace mobile? And I think businesses, the reason why is that businesses that fail to optimize their website for mobile risk losing a sizable portion of potential customers. So I actually read an interview recently, and it really actually kind of set the scene and resonated with me. If I, for example, went and stood at the front of your business and told every third person that they weren't allowed into your shop, I was like, no, stop, turn around and go back. You would tell me that, that action might be slightly questionable. But if you don't have a mobile presence, then you're essentially doing the same thing. You're turning away about 30% of the people that are coming to your website. So you don't have to go and create a mobile website, but at least having a responsively built website is really important. And the key point of this is that it's important to have a presence that is mobile friendly. So however it is that you choose to do it is based on your business, but it's important that you are present on mobile. So the second half of the planning process is then to allocate your resources and your budget. There's no point in developing a strategy if you don't have a plan on how to back it up with manpower. And it actually can be quite detrimental to your online presence if you don't have somebody there to do something. So for example, if you were, for whatever reason, we're going to go and set up a Facebook page, if you don't post or you're not active on that page, after a while Facebook will remove the ability for people to be able to search for you. So the only way that they're really able to find your business on Facebook is by having a direct link to your page. So it is really quite important. There are consequences of not having the manpower to back it up. The next point is about developing an action plan, so you know how you're going to do it and when you're going to do it, and it's really about scheduling essentially. And I think it's important not to be too ambitious. Do something that's all planned for something that is realistic for you and for your business. and actually start to execute the plan. And you might think that that's a bit of a silly point to add in, but it's essential, because if I had $1 for every business that I went into and they had a marketing plan or they had a bit of a campaign schedule and they didn't do anything with it, I would be on a holiday in the Caribbean or somewhere about now. So it really is important to actually execute the plan. Don't waste your time in setting up that initiative and not doing anything with it. And most importantly, measure your results, so that you can then start to put together a more effective plan next time, and you start to actually have a better understanding of what works for you and what doesn't. And then, of course, refine and review. The opportunity to improve your business practices is always something that's of value. On the screen, there are a few websites that you might find useful for more information about digital and how it can help you. Digitalbusiness.gov.au, for example, is a really great website to go to. It's got a heap of case studies and showcases how different types of mediums or channels to market can work well for different businesses. And I would actually encourage everybody to go and find the case study about the butcher that uses Twitter to sell his meat, which, I don't think I would have ever kind of connected the dots in that way. But it's a really great website. DEP Greater Sydney is great for smaller workshops if anybody wants to go out and participate in those. And you also have the opportunity then to participate in one-on-one marketing coaching, and it's all about the digital space, so it's perfect. So we come to the point of the webinar where it is question time. So if you do have a question about anything that you've seen in today's presentation, or there might be something that you've kind of had that's been sitting on the top of your head and you've always wanted to ask, by all means, please type it in the bottom left-hand corner. We encourage as many questions as possible. Prior to today's session, what we actually did was asked people who registered to we gave them the opportunity really to ask questions. So we've got a couple of questions here, and I might kick off with some of those. The first question is from Jim from New South Wales, and I'm going to ask this question of John, because I'm sure you're all sick of hearing my voice. And the question asks, how has the current decline affected the recruitment of staff in the industry, permanent and casual labour hire? It's a little bit off topic, but we can still respond.
Well, thanks, Layla. I don't have any figures and facts to present, so I can really only offer opinion, and that's formed on the basis of the conversations I have around the traps as I meet with manufacturers. I think there's a growing trend to hire more casual staff. I was with a company recently where I was told that 15 to 20% of their workforce, particularly at the shop floor, was casual. Not so much because they might have to just sort of get rid of them because the company's in decline. Quite the opposite. The company's actually being very, very innovative, and as they innovate their processes, they need fewer and fewer people. That's a growing trend, isn't it? And it's obviously targeted on cost reduction and the like. So they maintain that flexibility. They're very focused on their people, and actually reduce their staff through the casual labour side of the business. I'm seeing people out there who, at the other end of the spectrum, very highly qualified, and they're working. Well, I know some that are working part-time at the moment, which is a great sadness because they have an awful lot to contribute to manufacturing industry. They have a lot of experience and ought to be fully employed. But I think it varies a little bit. There are some businesses I know that are really flat out at the moment, working 6 days a week, and they have pretty much only permanent staff. So it's a really mixed bag. It's a very difficult question to answer accurately, I'm afraid, but that's the best I can do. Thank you.
Thank you. We have another question from Michael in Queensland, and he asks us to explain an effective website in current time to capture a commercial audience, particularly the front page. How effective can a website be in gaining business in the commercial industries? I think we've covered off a little bit of that in today's presentation, but I think one of the most, well, there's a couple of points. People are going to search for you. So if you don't have a website presence, it can be detrimental to how it is that you're positioned in the marketplace. B, a website helps validate who you are and what you do. And it really is an opportunity to showcase how you've helped other people. And it allows you to put up, case studies or testimonials from other businesses. So you've got that social proof element. And I suppose part of it is as well, it depends on, and what you should do is really, in a nutshell, clearly on the home page, describe, maybe the top 3 things that you do in your organization, your 3 main or key messages to market. People, I think it's like you've got 10 seconds or 7 seconds or something like that to kind of get people's attention, otherwise they bounce off your site. And so it really is about communicating clearly and effectively. If you don't do that, I think it is a lost opportunity. It's also about how effective you are and how welcoming you are to questions and communicating and contact with your business. So have a phone number that's there, have a contact us form, also have your email address, allow people to subscribe to any newsletters and make or stay in constant communication with you. I think it's really quite important. So a website, in a nutshell, it can be a very effective tool for commercial operations. Do you have anything to add to that, John?
No, I don't think so.
We have a question from Christy, who asks, how involved should the marketing director be in top management meetings and decisions with the business plans?
Well, my answer to that is very quickly, very, very involved. As I said earlier, marketing should be everybody's business. It is not just the prerogative of the marketing department. Everybody in the business should be focused on the marketplace they're serving. The manufacturing guy should be interested in his lead time and the quality of his product and whether he's getting any rejects back and whatever. If that's not suiting the marketplace, you're not doing yourself any big favors. So the marketing director has to be very involved and has to involve everybody else, as should the CEO and the senior management team. Strategic discussions shouldn't just be the prerogative of senior management. I think that's where strategy is obviously agreed and set, but it should involve everybody in the organization as well. Strategies, the real power in setting strategic direction is in the pain you go through, I think, in developing an effective strategy and then, of course, maintaining it. It's not something that's just set, cast in stone and left alone. It's constant because your environment, your business environment is constantly changing shape and moving according to exchange rates, technology developments, government policies and environmental issues and the like. So it's constantly moving. Everybody in the organization has a part to play, and hopefully the marketing director can take a very strong, very powerful leadership position in all of that stuff.
Absolutely, and I think, to add to that, I think it's very important for internal marketing as much as it is external marketing. I think you really do need to promote your business to other areas of the business as well as you need to, to those outside.
Yes.
We have another question from Christy, who would like to know, how do you sell the importance of how the spend will add value? So, how do we sell the ROI to boards and those types of things?
Well, I'm not sure you should have to sell it. ROI ought to be a guiding principle. I was once asked the question many years ago, is ROI the only arbiter, if you like, of what you do in your business? Well, no, it's not. I don't know, those of you who may have seen the old DuPont system, which has been around for years, that sort of works its way up from ground level type activities into an ROI measure. The thing I like about that system is that it actually identifies all the components of your business that that contribute to ROI. So there's an ultimate measure there called return on invested funds, and you have to serve that. The world is certainly focusing on that, and actually, sadly, is becoming short-term in its approach to measuring ROI. It can take a long time to build a very strong ROI. But how do you sell it? I think everybody in the business should see it. It should be. I remember one business I saw many years ago had a little room where they had that DuPont diagram set up in the room, and everybody in the business could go and have a look at it any time they wanted to. So they all knew how the business was performing, and all knew what their targets were, and all understood how they contributed. And I think so. You shouldn't be selling it just to the board. It should be sold right across the whole company.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think transparency about what it is that you're doing and how you're doing it, and what value or how that's going to help the business is really important as well, so people get it. And I think how it affects them individually. I think sometimes people don't get on board with things because they don't understand how exactly it's going to impact them and why do they care. So it's about, like what we were saying before about the internal marketing and selling it to the team as much as it is anything else. We have another question that came in earlier from Michael from Queensland. He would like to know, what level of importance do you place on country of origin branding in marketing products here in Australia and internationally?
Well, that's a tricky one. Of course, we all want to be very nationalistic in our approach and encourage the purchase of locally made products and services. No doubt about that, but that shouldn't be a crutch for manufacturing businesses to rest on. They are in a competitive environment. They have to be competitive, and they can't just cry that they're not getting the work locally. If they're not competitive. It's a global world, whether we like it or not, and I think there's great benefit in focusing on this Australian-made principle. It's something that the Chamber does. We have people embedded in the business who work on this in this area. But remember, you've got to be competitive, and we're seeing that most recently in some government decisions in the defence area. And there's a lot of hue and cry about purchasing submarines offshore or whatever. But the reality of it is the submarines made here are twice the cost. Hopefully, though, there's a part to play for Australian service providers in their maintenance. You've got to be competitive, guys. That's the way it is.
Absolutely. If anybody has any further questions, please feel free to type them into the question box down the bottom. John, is there anything that you would like to comment from your experience in manufacturing overall about maybe not only marketing but also the business overall?
Well, yes, I'd like to kind of reiterate the message I was trying to portray earlier, and that is that Australian business, Australian manufacturing, which is the area I'm most focused on, I guess, has to become more innovative. The world is becoming more innovative. There are big markets out there, and we saw that in that example we put up with Rode microphones. They export to 108 countries, 4,000 outlets, and they've built a very successful business and just won for at least the second time Exporter of the Year award, as we heard earlier. It can be done. Rode Microphones is absolutely committed to manufacturing here in Australia, and it has no reason to go overseas. I've heard Peter Friedman tell audiences that, and he's creating competitive advantages that can't be replicated very easily in China. Having said that, these other countries are not dumb. They're catching up all the time. You've got to be very innovative. You've got to be focused on the whole marketplace and constantly innovating to access larger markets. There is a chap at the University of Technology, Professor Sam Piccolo, who is promoting a slightly different, or a twist, if you like, on your business model, and that is it's about design-led or a design-led business model. I wholeheartedly support that. I think if you extrapolate the design process, you can take it forward into the future and look at opportunities for either servicing larger markets rather than just solving a current design problem, and or creating new markets. And that's something we've got to get better at. It's all before us. There's no need to be afraid of it, and in fact the challenge can be quite fun. Good luck.
Thanks. We've got one last question from Adam, who asks, when presenting a new technology, what is the best way to overcome a flat earth society, in inverted commas, mentality where people are afraid of change?
Wow. If we are still afraid of change in 2014, we've got a real big problem. Change can be a lot of fun. I've been working in this space, I hate to say, for about 25 years, and I can say honestly, at first it was grueling, it was extremely testing, it was extremely stressful, but once we got hold of what it all meant and how everybody could participate and how we could free up our minds and have a go, it just became fun. Most change actually starts in the right brain. This is where the creativity begins, and if you give some people a bit of latitude, it's amazing the sort of stuff they can come up with. Um, I've seen examples of that recently. You can't be afraid of change. It's a constant. Embrace it, enjoy it, grow with it. You'll find that you'll be a better developed person, and more understanding of the world's forces, if you like, and hopefully find a place in that world for your business and your employees. We've got to do that or we're sunk.
Absolutely, and I think it provides fantastic opportunity for the industry as well, and for our country too. You know, I think change is a fantastic thing. Without it, you know, we might all still be in caves, kind of lighting things and cooking it on sticks, type of a thing. Um,
Sorry, if
well,
I just interrupt there for a moment.
absolutely.
I sometimes ponder this, and I remember saying to an audience at one stage, I mean, I've been working this change uh, space, if you want to call it that, for something like 25 years. In that time, we as a nation won the right to hold an Olympic Games. We got our act together in the space of about 8 years and produced the best Olympic Games that's ever been produced. We can do it. That required us to do it, make extraordinary efforts, and that's all we really got to do is make the effort and embrace the change. Don't be afraid. Thanks,
Absolutely.
Layla. Sorry.
No, no, by all means. I think that's all the questions. There was a gentleman named George who was typing something, but I think that maybe he stopped. What we'll actually do is kind of prepare to end at this point. If you ever have any questions, please feel free to contact John. And his detail or his email is on the screen now. Or if there's a marketing related questions, by all means, please contact me. My email address is on the screen. Over the next couple of days, you will be all sent an email that will include the link to this presentation. So if there was anything on the presentation that you didn't quite have the opportunity to write down, don't be afraid. You will see all of the slides in the next couple of days. We'll also be sending you a bit of a step-by-step on an actual framework and building your planning process as well. So don't be afraid, again, if you didn't write down or you didn't quite catch something. Thank you very much for joining us. I hope that you found the webinar today to be useful. And we do honestly welcome any questions. I think one important thing to know is that the chamber itself was actually pretty much built on manufacturing, if I have that correct, John. And we've been around for over 100 years, and we're one of I think the longest standing businesses in this country. So we have a real commitment to manufacturing. We were born from manufacturing, and I think we've never really forgotten our past and what has made us successful in the business landscape. So we really we really are quite passionate about manufacturing, and John is employed just to help manufacturers, so please give him a call. And once again, thank you very much for your time this afternoon, and look out for that email in your inbox. If you do, in the meantime, want to go and check out some of our other webinars, just look for Australian Business Consulting and Solutions on YouTube, and you'll find a heap of useful content about all parts of the business. So thanks again.